Thank you for clicking on this video. I am Martin Prevost, and this is Rank the Movies. This week, I thought I'd do something a little different than I had before. I'm going to take a look at the movies of one actor and rank my top 10 favorites of that actor. That actor being one of my all-time favorite actors, though most of his movies did not make my top 100. If you went back and watched that video, I've loved him as an actor since I was a kid, so I've decided to rank his movies. This week, we have the top 10 Eddie Murphy movies. I like Eddie Murphy. So to get started with, we have our honorable mention, The Adventures of Pluto Nash. It's enjoyable. It is a giant ball of black, but it's an enjoyable ball of black. It is definitely one, if you've never sat down and watched The Adventures of Pluto Nash, it's worth watching. Basically, it takes place on the moon. And Pluto Nash is a moon man who runs a nightclub. His nightclub gets targeted by a bigger consortium, and it gets blown up. And basically, he's running for his life for this entire movie, trying to avoid getting killed, and trying to figure out who blew up his club and who's trying to kill him. It's not a great movie by any means. It's enjoyable, though. Sit down with it. You'll get a laugh, whether it's for the right reasons, because something's actually funny, or the wrong reasons, because everything's horrible and it's funny. You'll laugh, and that's what's important. You'll laugh. Alright, we've talked about the honorable mention. Let's move on to the list itself. Number 10, The Distinguished Gentleman. In this movie, Eddie Murphy plays a con man. Okay, we have nothing new there. Basically, Eddie Murphy is a character who decides to run for a seat in the Senate because the senator in his district has just died. And it so happens that Eddie Murphy's first name and middle name is the same as the dead congressman's full name. So he gets up all of his his campaign materials and runs using his first name and his middle name as the name you know, because that was the slogan of the dead congressman. He wins, he goes to the White House to pull the greatest con there is, which is taking money from people. Yep, that's the greatest con there is. Going to Washington, D.C. and getting all the money they can give you. Along the way, he meets a girl, and he learns about various problems in America, and he decides to do something about it, which, of course, in true Eddie Murphy fashion, it just turns into another con. It's an entertaining movie. It's not great by any means, but it's definitely entertaining, and it's worth watching. Number 9, Coming to America. Eddie Murphy plays an African prince who decides he wants to find his own queen when he meets the woman his parents have arranged for him to marry. She's basically his servant, and he doesn't want that. So he decides to travel to the one place any man can find a queen. Queens, New York! Don't ask me who writes this stuff. So he travels to Queens, takes a job at a McDonald's ripoff restaurant, which is also a McDonald's ripoff in the world of Coming to America. Sweet, falls in love with the owner's daughter, and begins to woo her, but never tells her he's actually an African prince, because she wants her to love him for him. He is tagged along by Arsenio Hall, playing his best friend / servant, who doesn't understand why Akeem, that is Eddie Murphy's character, wouldn't just want the subservient girl that his parents have provided for him. And James Earl Jones plays his father, which is great. It's a fun movie. It's worth checking out. It is one of Eddie Murphy's better films, as far as quality goes. If you've never seen Coming to America, take a look at it. It's worth a watch. Number 8, Life. Eddie Murphy plays a con man. Again, this is just what happens. Who meets up with Martin Lawrence, who is actually a banker, and they both get basically accused of a murder down in the South, where they're given a life sentence, and they're forced to spend that in a southern, basically a plantation jail, is what it would be called. This is the 1920s, 1930s is when the story starts. And it basically looks at their life being prisoners in life imprisonment and all the various things that they go through to get there up until they become old men. It's an interesting story. It's definitely worth watching. I think it's an underrated movie because it's got a lot of heart and a lot of depth to it that you just don't really see in a lot of movies. Plus, it covers such a large time span because it starts in the 20s, 20s and 30s, and it ends in the present day, which would have been 1990 something, early 2000s. So it covers a huge chunk of time. It's worth checking out. It is a really good movie. Number 7, Shrek. Eddie Murphy voices Donkey, a talking donkey who pals around with Shrek, who is an ogre trying to get his swamp back. So him and Donkey go to save Princess Fiona from a dragon in a tower, where Donkey subsequently falls in love with said dragon. You also have our evil Count, who wants to rule everything. It's Shrek. Most people know what it is. I probably got at least one fact wrong, because I haven't watched the movie in a while. But it is a really entertaining film. It's, Eddie Murphy's best voice acting role. Don't hate me, Disney, that I'm not picking Mushu, but it is his best voice acting role. It's a fun movie, and it definitely entertains very well. Number 6, 1,000 Words. This movie, I think, really got overlooked when it came out, and it got panned horribly. But I think it's a much better film than people make it out to be. In this one, Eddie Murphy plays a literary executive who is just trying to get the next big things published, the next big books published. He just got married, just had a kid, and he's kind of moving from the bachelor lifestyle into parenthood and being a husband, and it's just not quite melding yet. One day he goes to a self-help guru who has a new book, and he's trying to buy it, and he accidentally scrapes himself on a magical tree. This magical tree basically takes away the one thing Eddie Murphy's character is good at, which is talking. The more he talks, the more leaves fall off the tree. The more leaves fall off the tree, the sooner Eddie Murphy will die. Because when the tree has no leaves, it dies, and it's not connected to Eddie Murphy. So he has to reevaluate his life in a quick order, because he has about 1,000 leaves, therefore about 1,000 words. It's actually, I think, more than that, but it's a good movie. It is a great movie about watching someone actually make the changes in life they need to make. Eddie Murphy's performance is strong in this movie. I loved it when I first saw it, and I still to this day, when I throw it in, I always enjoy myself with it. 1,000 Words is definitely a movie worth checking out. Number 5, Beverly Hills Cop 2. It's the sequel to the first movie, which we'll get to. But Eddie Murphy reprises his role of Axel Foley, the Beverly Hills Cop, the Detroit cop who goes to Beverly Hills. This time around, it's because his friend from the first movie, Detective Bogomil, is shot, and he goes to help the investigation to try to find who shot it and solve a spree of robberies by a group known as the Alphabet Bandits. It's a fun movie. It shares a lot of the same beats as the first movie. It brings back a lot of the same actors. If you liked the first one, the second one is definitely worth checking out. The third one's not bad, but it's not, anything special. By the time you get to the third one, you've basically said everything you needed to say. If they make a fourth one, I'll go see it. But I do like Beverly Hills Cop 2. Number 4, Tower Heist. This is a movie I watch every Thanksgiving just because of the ending of the movie. Basically, Eddie Murphy plays a con man. We have a recurring theme. He plays a con man who lives in Astoria, New York. Ben Stiller also lives in Astoria. They're neighbors. And Ben Stiller works in a giant luxury apartment buildings called the Tower. One day, his good friend who lives in the Tower and lives in the penthouse, named Arthur Shaw, played by Alan Alda, gets arrested for tax fraud and embezzling, and basically, what most New York people get arrested for when it comes to that kind of stuff. It's found out that he probably did it. The doorman of the Tower gave his life savings to Arthur Shaw, and it's gone. And he tries to kill himself. So Ben Stiller goes, abuses Arthur Shaw's property, and now decides to rob Arthur Shaw. Find the money that has to be hidden in his penthouse apartment somewhere and take it. So he finds Eddie Murphy and brings him in, and they bring in Casey Affleck and Matthew Broderick and Michael Pena, and they all go to storm the castle. It's a fun movie. I've always enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of good depth of the characters. Plus, it's Alan Alda you don't see in a lot of stuff, and he does a great job. It's worth checking out, and again, the ending of the movie takes place on Thanksgiving. So if you're bored on Thanksgiving, watch Tower Heist. It's a good time. Number 3, Beverly Hills Cop. You knew it had to be here. This is a better movie than the first one. Not by a lot. Like, they're pretty level. You have Eddie Murphy plays Axel Foley, a Detroit cop who is visited by his best friend who happens to live in Beverly Hills. As they're hanging out, he shows him bearer bonds that he has taken from a warehouse that he is a security guard of. You find out these bearer bonds are not legal bearer bonds, and he's tracked down and his best friend is killed, with Eddie Murphy being knocked out on the floor nearby. Murphy takes time off from the Detroit Police Department and travels to Beverly Hills to solve his best friend's murder. There's also a drug conspiracy in this movie. It is a good time. It is a fun time. It was what revitalized Eddie Murphy's career after he made Best Defense, and everyone thought he had done a terrible, terrible thing. If I ever make a list of my guilty pleasure movies, Best Defense may be talked about. But this is the movie that brought him back into stardom. Basically, everything we've covered up to here, all is because of Beverly Hills Cop. If he never made this movie, most of those other roles probably wouldn't have been given to him. Number 2, Trading Places. The only movie on this list that would still be on this list, even if he had never made Beverly Hills Cop and never brought his star power back up. Because this is one of the few movies he made before Beverly Hills Cop. He made this in 48 hours. And then he made Best Defense, and Best Defense is garbage. Enjoyable garbage, but garbage nonetheless. Trading Places, Eddie Murphy plays a con man. Just can't get away from that. He is, a con man who gets arrested after being accused of trying to steal the payroll of a brokerage firm from Dan Aykroyd. The owners of the brokerage firm a pair of brothers, decide they want to do a social experiment to see if they take the con man and give him all the good things that Dan Aykroyd's character has, and you take the goody-goody silver spoon up his butt guy and take everything away and make him a street urchin if he'll turn to a life of crime. That's really what the movie is about. Eventually this is solved and it turns into Payback. It is Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd trying to get payback on the men who screwed with their lives. It is a great movie. It is a fantastic comedy. This is one that people call a Christmas movie. I don't. New Year's movie, maybe a little more so. But it's not a Christmas movie. It's just a really good movie, and it's worth checking out. If you've never seen it before, I know my explanation was bad, but definitely check it out. It's worth the watch. Alright, well, we've covered everything else, so that brings us to the top of the list, the best Eddie Murphy movie I've ever seen. And for those of you that watch the top 100, you already know what it is. Bowfinger. This is a classic for me. I love this movie. I love going back and rewatching it, and it is just a good time. Steve Martin plays Bobby Bowfinger. He is a movie director and producer who can't get a break. He decides to pitch a movie with a star that he doesn't have. The star is Kit Ramsey, Eddie Murphy's character. And so Bowfinger decides to shoot the movie without Kit Ramsey knowing it. Basically setting up the shots and just filming Ramsey and his natural reactions and having the actors do their part. The actors don't know what they're doing. They just think he's a really method actor. Eventually, Kit Ramsey goes insane because, weird crap is happening to him. And he goes into rehab. So, Bowfinger decides the only solution is to hire a body double. And he hires Eddie Murphy again in some makeup and a different character. You find out this character Eddie Murphy plays now is actually Kit Ramsey's brother, which explains why they look so close alike. And he ends up being able to almost complete the movie. When he's just about to get his last shot, that's when all hell breaks loose, and he loses the rights to use Kit Ramsey, which he never had, but now they know. It is a great movie. It is a tremendous comedy. Frank Oz directs it. He's a great director. You've got Steve Martin writing the script, and he's a comedy genius. those two working together, it is just amazing. Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy working together, it's a great time. I highly recommend Bowfinger. If you've never seen it before, definitely check it out. Alright, well, that brings us to the end of our list. If there's an Eddie Murphy movie out there you think I have overlooked, I've seen it, I can already tell you that. But yeah, I mean, you know, there are stuff like The Nutty Professor, 48 Hours, Best Defense, The Haunted Mansion. I doubt anyone is gonna say The Haunted Mansion is one worth should have been on this list. Same thing with The Golden Child. Well, maybe The Golden... I never cared for The Golden Child. He's got a lot more movies out there, and I'm aware of it. But these were my favorites. I've always loved Eddie Murphy as an actor. You know, and given the fact that his, really the smallest role the man's ever taken was in Dreamgirls, where he was fifth billed, but still billed above the title. I mean, that says something. My Name is Dolomite didn't make this list. It's good. If you have Netflix, check it out. It is a good movie. It just wasn't that good. If you have anything you want to say, leave a comment, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, I will see you next time, where I guarantee we'll be doing something way different.